Welcome to the High Voltage AI Podcast. We are thrilled to have you join us for a very special deep dive this week. This deep dive is actually part of a week-long series. It's featured in the High Voltage AI newsletter on Substack. We're spending the week educating electric utility engineers on some really crucial topics, things like overhead and underground construction types. Exploring why specific methods get used, their unique characteristics, and also looking at the broader future of grid infrastructure and innovative energy solutions. For today, Tuesday, we're zeroing in on a really dynamic topic. I think it's quite groundbreaking, inside the Texas VPP and ERCOT's groundbreaking pilot. Our mission today is really to unpack the unique characteristics, the implications of the virtual power plant market that's developing down in Texas. What's driving it? What can we learn?
Yeah, and this really builds directly on what we started discussing on Monday. We kicked off the series with the VPP revolution, from concept to grid-scale reality. We looked at how virtual power plants, or VPPs, aren't just some future concept anymore. They're actively transforming the grid right now. Just to put some numbers on that, again, North America currently has around 33 gigawatts of VPP capacity operating. That's a pretty substantial resource already. It's roughly 20% of all the available distributed energy resource capacity on the continent. But the ambition, the scale we're talking about going forward is really staggering. The U.S. Department of Energy, they're projecting that by 2030, we need to more than triple that capacity. We're talking somewhere between 80 and 160 gigawatts.
Wow, 80 to 160. That's a huge jump.
It is. And if we hit that target, VPPs could end up serving anywhere from 10 to maybe 20% of U.S. peak demand. And the economic impact, an estimated $10 billion in annual grid cost savings.
$10 billion a year.
Yeah, and that's not just efficiency savings. It's about potentially avoiding massive investments in new transmission lines, new power plants. And it could significantly reduce how often we have to run those expensive peaker plants, the older, less efficient ones that only fire up during peak demand. So it really is a transformative force, both for grid resilience and for the economics of the system.
It certainly sounds like it, especially with those potential savings and the impact on managing peak demand. And as I mentioned, this is a topic we're exploring all week from different angles. Just to give you a quick roadmap for the rest of our series. Yesterday, Monday, was the VPP revolution. Today, of course, we're digging into the Texas VPP and the ERCOT pilot. Tomorrow, Wednesday, we'll be getting into the engineering side, engineering the future, overcoming VPP integration challenges. Sure. Then Thursday shifts focus to VPPs and the grid, a new era for system planning and operations. We'll wrap things up on Friday with the VPP ecosystem, markets, policies, and pathways to success. Okay, so let's unpack this Texas situation. Texas is always fascinating when it comes to energy, right? Unique grid, that independent streak, it seems to be becoming a real hotspot for virtual power plants. What is it specifically about the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, ERCOT, that makes it such a dynamic market for VPPs? What's the secret sauce down there?
Well, what's really interesting about Texas, about ERCOT, is this kind of unique confluence of factors. It creates almost a perfect environment for VPP growth. First off, you've got just massive load growth.
Right. Population boom, industry moving in.
Exactly. Both population growth and significant industrial expansion. Think about new data centers, big manufacturing facilities, plus millions of new residents, all adding substantial demand. Then second, Texas is, well, no stranger to extreme weather, is it?
Definitely not. Heat waves, freezes.
Intense summer heat waves, severe winter storms like Uri. We've seen firsthand how these events can put immense strain on grid reliability. So that makes flexibility and having additional capacity absolutely critical. And then the third piece, and this is crucial, is its deregulated market structure.
The competitive market.
Precisely. Unlike vertically integrated markets where one utility might own everything, generation, transmission, distribution, ERCOT's competitive retail and wholesale markets inherently encourage innovation. It allows new players, new technologies like VPPs to enter the market and compete more freely. They can offer services that might face, more regulatory hurdles elsewhere.
So that combination, the need from load growth and weather, plus the market structure that allows new solutions.
Exactly. It creates this powerful incentive for new, flexible grid resources like VPPs to emerge and participate.
That context really paints a clear picture. So with all that demand pressure and the need for flexibility, what's the actual regulatory framework? Is there a specific pilot program enabling this VPP growth in Texas? How are they getting these VPPs involved meaningfully?
Yeah, this really gets to the practical side, doesn't it? How do you go from concept to actual grid participation? The key piece is the ERCOT Aggregated Distributed Energy Resource Pilot Program. They call it the ADR pilot. That program is the critical regulatory enabler. What it does is provide a specific, structured pathway for VPPs. And remember, VPPs are these aggregations of lots of smaller distributed resources like smart thermostats, maybe EV chargers, home batteries.
Right, pooling them together.
Pooling them together. The ADEER pilot lets these aggregations participate directly in the ECOT wholesale market. And that participation is absolutely crucial because it means these VPPs can actually get compensated for the grid services they provide.
Makes sense. They need a revenue stream.
Of course. Whether it's reducing demand during peak hours, providing ancillary services like, say, frequency regulation, or just offering flexible capacity. The ADEER program creates that market mechanism. It gives them a way to bid in. Without that clear compensation structure, that clear pathway to market, it would be incredibly difficult to integrate and use these distributed resources at the kind of scale needed to really impact grid operations. It's foundational.
Yeah.
Okay, foundational. And knowing Texas, they tend to do things big. So is there a sort of flagship VPP project there that really embodies this growth? One that shows off their particular approach, given ERCOT's unique needs?
Oh, absolutely. Texas isn't doing this small scale. The flagship project that really highlights their ambitious approach is, it's a collaboration aiming to build a truly massive 1 gigawatt virtual power plant.
1 gigawatt. That's the size of a large traditional power plant.
Exactly. That's the scale we're talking about. But instead of one big facility, it's distributed across potentially, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of individual devices. And what's really fascinating isn't just the size, though that's impressive. It's the partnership behind it. It's a collaboration between NRG Energy, Renew Home, and Google Cloud.
Okay, big names involved.
Very big names. And here's the really interesting part. The primary basis, the core technology for this enormous VPP. It isn't utility-scale batteries or huge solar farms. It's smart thermostats.
Smart thermostats for a gigawatt VPP.
Primarily, yes. That choice tells you a lot about the specific problems Texas is trying to solve, and it really offers a valuable lesson about tailoring these VPP solutions to specific grid needs.
That is striking, isn't it? Because, when you hear about VPPs, especially looking at California, the conversation often revolves heavily around battery storage, residential batteries, utility-scale batteries. So what does this mean when we compare Texas to California? Why the focus on thermostats for such a huge project in Texas versus the battery-centric models we see dominating elsewhere? What's the underlying logic driving that difference?
This is such a critical distinction, and it highlights a really important, maybe sometimes counterintuitive lesson for anyone involved in grid planning or VPP development. There's a direct link, almost a causal link, between the nature of a region's specific grid problem and the most viable, most economic distributed energy resource to aggregate. And that, in turn, really defines the primary VPP model for that region.
Okay, so the problem dictates the tool.
Precisely. Let's connect this to the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Look at California. Their big challenge stemmed from having so much solar power, right? That high solar penetration created the famous duck curve.
Right, the midday solar surplus, then the steep evening ramp when the sun goes down.
Exactly. You get this oversupply of cheap solar energy during the day, then demand shoots up rapidly in the evening as solar generation disappears and everyone comes home, turns on lights, appliances, AC. So to tackle that problem, managing the evening ramp and utilizing the midday solar California's main VPP model is logically battery-centric. It's supply-side focused. Think about Sunrun's CalReady program. They aggregate something like 75,000 home batteries from over 56,000 homes.
Wow.
Yeah, and that delivers up to 375 megawatts of dispatchable capacity. Essentially, they store that cheap midday solar and discharge it during the evening peak. The battery is the perfect tool for that specific problem. Now, contrast that sharply with Texas. Texas faces a fundamentally different, though equally massive challenge, those extreme air conditioning-driven summer peak loads.
Yeah, when it hits 105 degrees Fahrenheit.
Exactly. When temperatures soar, everyone cranks up their AC simultaneously. This creates these huge, sustained spikes in electricity demand that can push the ERCOT grid right to its limits. So what's the most economically efficient, the most effective way to handle those specific demand-side spikes?
Reducing demand, I guess.
Precisely. Demand-side management. Strategically reducing energy consumption when the grid needs it most. And that is exactly why Texas's flagship 1 gigawatt VPP is built primarily on smart thermostats. These devices, aggregated together, can subtly adjust temperatures by maybe a degree or two across thousands, even millions of homes. Individually, it's barely noticeable, but collectively, you can shed significant load, megawatts of load, without really impacting people's comfort.
So it's about shaving that peak demand caused by AC.
It's about strategically reducing demand precisely when the grid is most stressed by air conditioning load. It directly targets the core problem in ERCOT during summer. The profound lesson here, I think, for anyone designing a VPP strategy or really any grid modernization effort is crystal clear. The solution must be tailored. It has to fit the local resource mix, the climate, the specific load shape, the unique grid needs of that region.
You can't just copy what California did.
Exactly. Just copying a model from another region without that deep understanding of the underlying problem and the local context, it simply won't lead to sustained success. It's really about finding the right tool for the right job, region by region.
That's such a fantastic point. Tailoring the solution is key. It drives home that one size fits all just doesn't work for the grid. So looking at these hotspots like Texas, seeing this rapid growth, what are the broader market dynamics? You mentioned the partnerships, the scale. It really feels like there's a kind of land grab happening in the VPP space, especially in these high growth areas. What's fueling that competitive frenzy?
You've hit the nail on the head. The industry is very much in a land grab phase right now. It is absolutely intense. And the game right now is all about scale and customer access. Those are the primary competitive advantages determining who's going to lead this market going forward.
Scale and customer access.
Yes, we're seeing rapid consolidation. You have these large aggregators, companies like C-Power, Anal, Voltus, Sunrun. They're rapidly building multi-gigawatt portfolios of controllable resources. I mean, companies like Voltus even report being able to build 500 megawatts of controllable capacity in a single market within just 1 year.
Half a gigawatt in a year. That's incredibly fast deployment for distributed assets.
It's a remarkable speed. And it highlights the urgency and the scale of this transition. Now, think back to that 1 gigawatt Texas project we discussed, the one based on thermostats. Its success hinges almost entirely on Energy's ability to leverage its massive existing retail customer base.
Oh, because they already have the customers.
They already have relationships with millions of Texans. They have the billing relationship, the communication channel, hopefully some level of trust. This allows them to rapidly deploy those smart thermostats, often offering them at no upfront cost to the consumer because they can tap into that existing network.
So the customer acquisition cost is much lower for them.
Dramatically lower, potentially.
Sure.
And this really underscores a key point. The primary barrier to entry in this burgeoning VPP market isn't necessarily having the absolute most cutting-edge technology itself. I mean, the technology is crucial, obviously, and it's maturing rapidly. But the real challenge, the true competitive hurdle right now, is the ability to actually acquire and enroll hundreds of thousands or even millions of these distributed energy resources at scale, efficiently and cost-effectively.
Getting the devices into homes and businesses and signed up.
Exactly. That operational piece, the customer engagement piece, is paramount. And this dynamic strongly suggests the VPP market, at least in the near to medium term, will likely be dominated by players who can master customer acquisition and who typically has that advantage. Those who already have access to large existing customer networks.
Like the utilities themselves.
Utilities, absolutely. Yeah. Large retail energy providers like NRG, even the major solar installers who already have footholds in homes, their established customer relationships, their brand recognition, gives them a huge head start in this intense race for scale and market share. It's becoming a strategic battle for who controls access to these distributed grid resources.
This has been a really insightful deep dive into the Texas VPP market and that ERCOT pilot. Fascinating stuff. We've seen how that unique mix in Texas, the load growth, the extreme weather, the deregulated market, how it's really fostered a distinct demand-side-focused VPP model. And that 1 gigawatt project using mainly smart thermostats really exemplifies that, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It's a powerful case study in how specific grid challenges really shape the most effective and the most economically viable solutions.
Yeah, it's clearly not just about finding the coolest new tech, but finding the right tech for the specific problem you're trying to solve.
Precisely. And maybe connecting this back to the bigger picture for our listeners, considering this land grab phase we just talked about and how critical customer acquisition is for VPP success, how might the success of projects like that 1 gigawatt Texas VPP influence future grid strategies in other regions, especially regions that might have different grid needs, maybe less obvious ones than Texas's peak load issue?
That's a great question. Will they try to replicate the customer acquisition model even if the technology needs to be different?
Potentially. And perhaps even more fundamentally, what does this whole aggressive push into aggregating millions of customer-sited distributed assets, What does it mean for the traditional utility business model? Those models historically weren't built around this level of, decentralized control or deep customer engagement and energy management.
Right, it's a big shift from centralized power plants.
It's a massive shift. It really raises an important question about how quickly the entire energy industry needs to adapt to this new distributed paradigm that's unfolding right before our eyes.
Definitely food for thought there. How do traditional players adapt, or do new players dominate? And speaking of adapting and integrating, join us tomorrow as we continue our week-long series. We'll be tackling engineering the future, overcoming VPP integration challenges. We'll get into the nitty-gritty of making these systems work seamlessly with the grid we have today. And as always, if you'd like to leave feedback or have any questions on today's discussion, please feel free to reach out to our producer, Julius Guay, on LinkedIn. That's G-U-A-R-Y, and remember it's pronounced Guay, like in Paraguay. We look forward to continuing the conversation tomorrow.